We're going to be looking at configuring beans with annotations. So we now totally avoid the XML files, as they are sometimes helpful, but more used is Java annotations. And this is what we're going to be using. We can totally get rid of our XML file. We're not going to use it, and instead we're just going to use our simple Java to instantiate everything. So in our IoT device Java, we're going to make some changes in here. The first is that we are going to have our act component. This is important. A component is a class whose instances can be injected into like another object. So we need this in here. We now need to make a bean configuration. Previously we've done this in an XML file, but we want to put this in a Java file. So we were going to do a component scan, and it allows us to gather all different components from an application which instantiates our beans. And our component scan is going to be in this new file right here. So we can go into our project, we can go into our package right here, we can make a new Java file. We're just going to call it IoT device bean config, and we're going to have this inside of here. We'll come back to this in a second. This is currently not important. What is important is our configuration, because we want it to be a configuration, just as this one's a component. This one configures everything. We are then going to have our component scan, and inside of here we have our base packages equal to, and this is our com.skillsoft. So we set our base package to whatever our actual package is. This scans for any components which is inside of our package. This is perfect because we have a component here. We can make multiple classes which have multiple components as well. And then inside of here, we will get to what it's doing in a second. The configuration itself marks the file as a configuration that can be fed into an application context. It contains the beans we will use in our Spring application as well. So we have this right here, configuration, everything, and now we can go into our main. So we have commented out everything that we've done previously. We don't need all of this. That was all for our XML, and now we're going to switch it up. Using Java, we don't need as much. So here we use the annotation to set up the application context in our Java source file. So we have our public class main, we have our public static void main. Now the next part we're keeping. We had this in here previously. This should automatically create an instance of our bean, but we're going to go and make an instance anyways. We went over this previously if we have our application context. So we're going to do all of this in the next couple lines. It points to our class which has been marked for configuration for this lower part right here. So we have our application context, we're just calling it app context, and we're setting it equal to a new annotation configure application context. And then we're passing in our IoT device config dot class. So this class right here, IoT device bean class, this bean class is what we have here. We're passing it in here, we're putting in our app context. So app context basically kind of holds this, so you can think about it like that. Now we want to get the beans from here. So we're going to do app context.getBean, and then we're going to pass in our IoT device.class. This kind of puts the bean in here. And then we're storing it in a IoT device. So this is going to be my first device bean. It's an IoT device because of our class right here. So we're putting it inside of here. It's making an object. It's the same as the bean IoT device. And now we can simply just do a my first device bean, which is the name, dot set device, the fridge, and we can also set the this is set device, but this should not be set device, this should be set description instead. So we'll change this to simply do a set description, and it's just going to print out it's cold in here. And we have our sysout print line, we have our first bean, and then our my device bean. When we just do our my device bean, we are going to call the toString method that is in our IoT device, which is down here. Now we also have a constructor, which we don't need, so we can just comment out. We don't need it. That's what this object part is. Object created successfully, but we don't need it. We're just going to want our first bean, then we're going to print out the IoT device, and then we print out the toString right there. If we wanted to also, we can make a space right here. So that's how that would work. Now if we run this, we can go up here, click run our main, and it's going to print out our first bean, IoT device, and then we can have our device and description right here. Now what if we want more control on how something gets instantiated? To do this, we're going to go into our IoT device, which is this one right here for our class. Now we can delete our component, we can delete all of this in here, so I'll just comment this out for now. And then what we're going to have to do to compensate for that is we're going to make it in our IoT device bean configuration. Again, this gives us a little bit more flexibility and it can be a little bit easier to use. So inside of our public class IoT device bean config, this is what we have here as the file. We can take out the component scan as well because we're not scanning for any components, right? If everything is inside of here, we don't need to scan for the components. It's just going to pull it from inside of our public class. We can see that both of these currently are grayed out, meaning we're not using them. We will use this first one, and we will go over this in a second. So if I expand this, we can see what it's going to be here. We have our bean right here, and then we have our public IoT device, that's going to be the file name, and then we're going to have our method name, which is our IoT device bean. And then we're going to return a new IoT device. So basically what this is doing is it has the same name and it's returning our IoT device as a bean, and it's called IoT device bean. So what we want to do is we want to take this name, our IoT device bean, go back into our main. Inside of our line 12, we want to replace this right here. We don't want to touch our application class because that is still getting our IoT device bean configuration.class. So this app context is going to get our bean configuration. And now in our bean configuration, we are going to have to use this. So we're not working with the individual class, we're going through a middleman, which is our IoT device bean config. So we're going to paste our name that we have in here. That's actually going to be this IoT device bean. So we take out everything inside of this parentheses, and we're going to want this inside of parentheses. That's just how this would work. So I'll paste it inside of here, and I'll take this out. Now this isn't going to work because when we do this, it's going to give back this configuration right here, which is not the IoT device class, which is what this is. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to cast it as this, so it can safely put it inside of here. With that casting done out front, it's going to work just the same. So we can again run this main right here, and it's going to give our first bean, we see IoT device, same thing, everything right here. And that's just a way to do it inside of here. Now, let's say we want a different name right here, not IoT device bean. Let's just say we want like test bean. And I'm just going to copy this because we're going to use it in a second. And then we can run our main. We can see it gives us an error. And the error is that we have no bean named test bean available. And this is giving us a bunch of information about it, but basically it's saying it's at here. And how do we fix this? Well, we can set a different name inside of here without changing our method, because our method is what this is based off of. We do add bean, and then we're going to add arguments to it. So inside of here, all we need to do is set our name equal to, and then test bean. We can add some quotes because everything seems to like quotes inside of here. Adding the quotes, we will run our main again, and then we should get no error. So your first bean, and then everything like this. So just a quick recap, we have not changed our pom.xml. We have changed our IoT device. If we want less control, we can just use a component here. Or we can put everything together, which is what I like. Instead of having the component inside of here, going into our device bean configuration right here, and putting everything inside of here. That way we can work with multiple classes, and we have everything in one file that we're calling. This is going to be our middleman. It makes everything super easy to look at. We just have our configuration here. If we had to do it the other way, we would scan our entire package to see the other classes inside of here. But here we just make our beans like this. This is how we would make a bean. Super simple, super easy. And then we could just use them in our main with the application context, making a new application configuration, application context, passing in this class, the middleman class, and then passing in our IoT device, which is our class. We're casting it app context.getBean. So we are actually doing the get bean from the application context. Basically, these two lines work very well together and eliminate a bunch more code that we have done previously with our XML. So this is not using our XML anymore. Much better, much simpler, and that's how we go about solving this. Next, we're going to look at like using init and destroy methods for our beans and others as well. Those can be found in the playlist linked below the like button.